The truth that nobody likes to face is simple and brutal. The world doesn't reward purity, it rewards lucidity. In any street, company, or human relationship, there's always someone willing to take advantage of you, if it means even the slightest advantage. Machiavelli observed this reality centuries ago, and nothing has changed. Men continue to be driven not by ideals, but by necessity, convenience, and, when possible, self-interest. It's uncomfortable to admit this, but it's even more dangerous to ignore. Have you ever wondered how many times you've been harmed by trusting too much? How many opportunities have been taken by someone less prepared, but more attentive to the real game? Machiavelli said that few see what you truly are. Many only see what you appear to be. This silent rule governs everything. Betrayal doesn't stem from pure evil, but from circumstances that transform ordinary people into agents of their own survival. And when you understand this, something within you changes. Pain ceases to be merely a wound and begins to become a tool. Falls are no longer final. They become instructions. Humiliation becomes fuel. It is in this shadowy terrain between loss and lucidity that the intelligence Machiavelli most respected is born. Intelligence hardened by reality. While many revolt, you observe. While others struggle with injustice, you gather signs. While they are consumed by impulses, you learn to move your pieces with the patience of a chess player. There is a power that doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, and doesn't show off. It simply grows in the silence of those who already understand how people work. You can feel this power taking shape every time you perceive a hidden intention, calculated word, an attitude that doesn't match what was said. It's as if a new pair of eyes opens within you. But the big question remains, what will you do with this awareness? Will you continue reacting to the world as it should be? Or will you finally begin to act within the world as it is? Machiavelli always emphasized that lucidity is the true armor, and it is this armor that you begin to wear now, in the first step of a journey that demands absolute attention. From here on out, everything you thought about influence, protection, and strategy will begin to change. And this is just the beginning. There are people you meet only once and never forget, not for what they said, but for what they left unsaid. Machiavelli understood this silent power better than anyone else. He knew that when someone reveals little, the other person's imagination works much harder than any direct explanation. Think about your daily conversations. How many times do you rush to justify your plans, defend your choices, or explain details that no one asked for? And how many times after that do you realize you gave away more of yourself than you should have? That's how we lose influence without realizing it. We show too much, too soon, and cancel out the mystery that could have protected us. Imagine a simple situation. Someone asks how your weekend was. Most people respond automatically, giving details, trying to be polite. But notice how the energy changes when someone simply says, "I took care of some important things." The person asking becomes curious, tries to decipher what wasn't said, spends hours imagining possibilities. It is in this gap that influence is born. Machiavelli knew that silence awakens more interest than excessive transparency. It's not about hiding the truth, but about not revealing it before the right moment. The same thing happens when you change your tone depending on who is in front of you, not out of falsehood, but out of wisdom. You don't speak to your boss the same way you speak to your brother, and that's natural. What Machiavelli proposes is to transform this instinctive adaptation into a conscious tool. Some people need logic, others need emotion, others need vision. The way you express yourself shapes their understanding. Isn't it impressive to realize that you already do this without noticing, and that, if you did it intentionally, you could transform how you are perceived in any environment? The curious thing is that when you start behaving like this, something unexpected happens. People start observing you more. They begin to weigh your words, interpret your gestures, and try to guess your intentions. Some may even feel a slight unease, as if you've become less predictable. And at that exact point, you gain an advantage that few possess, the ability to be read simply by the surface you choose to show. But this transformation comes at a price. The more you understand the depth of human masks, the more you realize that almost no one shows their true face. The question is, are you ready to see beyond appearances and allow others to see only what you wish to reveal? Because from this point on, relationships cease to be simple encounters and become strategic moves. And you are about to discover what it truly means to have emotional control over yourself and the impact you have on others. There are moments in life when you realize that what you fear losing most is precisely what controls you most. Machiavelli understood this with almost surgical precision. He knew that emotional dependence distorts decisions, weakens perception, and transforms even the most intelligent person into someone easily manipulated. Attachment to expectations, approval, or any form of illusory security makes us fragile, and it is precisely when you decide to let go of what binds you that something surprising happens. The mind begins to breathe again. The silence that once seemed uncomfortable now transforms into lucidity. Detachment in this sense is not the absence of feelings, but the presence of clarity. It is the ability to distinguish what is essential from what is merely emotional habit. Machiavelli observed that truly strong leaders did not depend on the applause or fear of others to act. They depended only on their own vision. This kind of freedom does not arise by chance. It emerges when you realize that nothing external can define your value or your path. What once seemed indispensable reveals itself to be merely circumstantial. But here, an inevitable question arises. What would you do if nothing could blackmail you? Who would you become if you were truly free from the fear of losing? It is in this strategic void that silent leverage begins to emerge. People imagine that power is something displayed, declared, imposed. But Machiavelli knew that the most lasting power is that which does not need to be proven. It is the power that emerges when you control the rhythm of the conversation, not through words, but through how you wait. When you observe the emotions of others before offering your own. When you understand that silence is not absence, but an amplified presence. It is there, in the space between what is said and what is perceived, that true influence takes hold. The scene is simple, yet revealing. You pause before responding. The other person tries to fill that silence, tries to justify themselves, tries to reorganize their speech to gain your approval. And all this happens without you raising your voice. You simply occupy the space with surgical precision. It seems small, but it's decisive, because whoever controls the timing of the interaction also controls the interpretation of the moment. And in the end, it is the interpretation that defines social reality. Now think, how many opportunities have you missed by speaking before observing? How many times have you surrendered your own power trying to rush a response? Why do you still fear the void when it is within it that your strength grows? From this point on, you begin to understand that presence isn't noise, it's impact. And that impact isn't physical force, but a strategic reading of the environment. That's how, little by little, you stop reacting to the world and start leading it. Silence ceases to be weakness and becomes your most precise weapon. And it's precisely when this perception matures that you begin to see what was hidden all along. True influence always arises where others never look. There are people who seem to decipher you even before you speak. They perceive nuances, hesitations, silent intentions. Machiavelli observed this type of mind with fascination because he knew that those who see what lies behind the words acquire a rare kind of power. He himself said that few truly feel what is hidden in the human soul. And yet, it is precisely in this invisible territory that alliances, conflicts, and downfalls are formed. Imagine a typical conversation in a cafe. While someone complains about work, most people only hear the words. But a trained person identifies something deeper: insecurity disguised as anger, fear masked as courage, a plea for validation embedded in the posture. This perception changes everything. Scientists have discovered that the human brain takes less than a second to identify someone's emotional state simply by their tone of voice. Less than a second. What Machiavelli intuited through observation, neuroscience now confirms. We understand much more than we hear, even without realizing it. Now imagine using this ability consciously, intentionally, strategically. Instead of responding to the surface, you respond to the core. When someone says, "I'm tired," you perceive that the tiredness stems from frustration. When someone attacks, you perceive that the attack is merely a shield. This type of reading transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for silent influence. But here's something curious. The more you read people, the more you realize how rarely they read themselves. Some people live for years without understanding their own fear, repeating the same mistakes because they never listened to what their own behavior was trying to tell them. And it is at this point that reality becomes almost ironic. Machiavelli knew that men are guided much more by what they appear to want than by what they truly seek. This distance between real desire and public discourse creates conflicts, contradictions, and improbable decisions, like someone who ends a relationship not out of lack of love, but out of fear of being rejected first. A famous incident among Italian diplomats confirms this logic. Once, an ambassador interpreted a rival's silence as weakness and aggressively advanced the negotiation. He later discovered that the silence was not hesitation, but calculation. The rival gained time, analyzed the opponent's emotional pressure, and used this to steer the entire final decision. A single misinterpretation changed the political course of two cities. It seems exaggerated, but that's exactly how human dynamics work. Tiny details define immense consequences. And here's the unsettling question. If you can perceive what's hidden in others, how much have others already perceived about you without you saying a word? Because understanding others is power, but being understood too much can be vulnerability. It's in this delicate balance that true influence begins to form. And it's also where you're about to enter now, as relationships cease to be mere encounters and become territories to be navigated with absolute attention. Sometimes, a person's strength lies not in what they show, but in what they hide. Machiavelli understood this precisely. He knew that revealing everything about yourself opened doors for others to use your information against you. In everyday life, this appears in simple ways. Just observe how people reveal their fears and plans without realizing it. They talk about projects before they even start, display vulnerabilities in casual conversations, and rush to seek validation for every choice. The problem is that when you give too much away, you lose the advantage before the competition even begins. Controlled exposure functions as a silent strategy. Imagine someone who never fully reveals their intentions. Those around them try to interpret every gesture, every word, every pause. A simple phrase can generate speculation. Silence can create unease. And without realizing it, those observing begin to act based on what they imagine, not on what they actually know. That's where an unexpected form of power is born. The less predictable you are, the harder it is for someone to manipulate you. And, at the same time, the easier it becomes to direct the behavior of others. But the most intriguing point arises when you realize that this control doesn't depend on extreme emotional strength. It depends solely on awareness. Imagine an important negotiation. While everyone tries to prove their worth by talking too much, you decide not to reveal your limits. The others begin to wonder how far you can go, what you really want, what your hidden priority is. This doubt, in itself, changes the entire dynamic. Uncertainty presses, shifts, destabilizes, and you remain firm, observing in silence. In the end, they are the ones who give in first, not out of fear, but out of a lack of clarity. The obsession with results, which Machiavelli considered essential, comes into play here as a force that sustains this entire approach. It doesn't matter who seems more convincing. What matters is who achieves the final objective. This type of focus eliminates distractions. You stop arguing to win and start acting to conclude. Many people fail because they want to appear intelligent. Those who win prefer to appear discreet and efficient. It's a simple but transformative choice. And then comes the twist that no one noticed. The more you control what you reveal and focus solely on the outcome, the more the world begins to see you differently. People start to respect you, even without understanding exactly why. There's something about your presence that becomes difficult to decipher. Something that provokes curiosity, caution, and even admiration. And when that happens, you realize you're not just playing, you're setting the pace of the game. All of this prepares the ground for the final step, the one that transforms awareness into real power. There comes a point when all knowledge ceases to be theory and begins to demand action. Machiavelli knew that true change doesn't happen in the mind, but in the silent movement you make when no one is watching. After understanding each of the principles that shape human power, it's natural to feel a weight, as if the world has grown in size. But this weight is not a burden, it's responsibility. You don't need to master all the traits at once. You only need to choose one, just one, the one that touched you the most, the one that bothered you the most, or the one that made the most sense. It is at this point of internal friction that your transformation begins. Imagine applying detachment, or controlled exposure, or strategic pauses in dialogue for 7 days. Imagine noticing the difference in how people look at you, how they react, how they try to decipher you. Small gestures begin to reveal great results. Machiavelli said that fortune favors those who prepare. The preparation here isn't grandiose. It's discreet, almost invisible, made up of daily micro-decisions. You learn to speak less, observe more, control the rhythm of your own presence. This silent practice creates a confidence that doesn't need to be declared. It simply exists. And perhaps the most profound part of this journey is the realization that none of this is about dominating others, but rather about preventing the world from bending you. When you understand your emotions, know your limits, and guide your own narrative, something changes definitively. Life ceases to be a field of uncertainties and becomes navigable territory. You stop responding impulsively and begin to respond with clarity, and it is this clarity that transforms your mind into your greatest ally. Machiavelli did not seek to create tyrants, but conscious individuals capable of surviving and thriving in a complex world. Now, the question turns to you. What will you do with all this? Will you let this reflection get lost in the routine, or will you use this moment as a turning point? The decision seems small, but it defines destinies. If you choose to act, even silently, you will already be ahead of most, because true power lies not in appearing strong, but in building a strength that no one can take away from you. If this video changed the way you see people, life, or yourself, like it now, leave a comment, even if anonymous, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps this message continue to reach those who need to hear it. And remember, the strategy always starts within.